Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So the topic of today's video is going to be unrequited love, which is when you have romantic interest in someone who doesn't feel the same way about you. If you're going through this right now, no worries, because I've been through it. I feel like most people have been through it. If my memory serves me correct, the statistics on unrequited love is that 80% of the population has been in love with someone who didn't feel the same way about them. So, like I said, you're definitely not alone in this. As a matter of fact, you're 4 times more likely to fall in love with someone who isn't going to love you back versus falling in love with someone who is going to reciprocate the feeling. So, I mean, it happens to most of us. So what I want to talk about in today's video is the different levels of unrequited love, why unrequited love hurts us so badly, why some people cope with unrequited love better than other people do, and lastly, I'll just give a few tips on how to cope if you're going through it right now. So first up is the different levels of unrequited love. And basically this is on a scale of what hurts the least versus what hurts the most. So there are different types of unrequited love. Some are easier to cope with and some are harder to cope with. So these different levels include having a crush on someone who is unavailable, having a crush on someone nearby without making romantic contact, pursuing a love object, an unequal love relationship, and longing for a past lover. So first on the scale is having a crush on someone who is unavailable. This is usually when we have a crush on a movie star or a singer. We know there's no real chance that we're going to be with them, so we don't really get that emotionally invested or involved. And that's why this type of unrequited love is usually the easiest to break. It's not that hurtful. It's something that we can cope with and get over fairly quickly. Now, there are cases where fans get a little bit too emotionally involved. But generally, we don't really feel a romantic bond with these celebrities that we might have a crush on or that we might be interested in. So next is having a crush on someone without initiating romantic contact. Basically what that means is you have a crush on someone, but you never let it be known to the person that you have a crush on. You never show them any type of romantic interest. And that could be because maybe you're lacking the self-confidence, or also there are cases where people try to become a friend first, like they get in good as a friend so that they can flip the script and then show their romantic interest. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I don't like when people do that personally, because if you see someone that you're attracted to and you know you have a romantic attraction to them, it's kind of better to let your intentions be known from the beginning. Like when you try to be manipulative and not say anything just yet, like go in as if you're a platonic friend and then try to drop the bomb on them later on. That's how a lot of people kind of end up in the friend zone, because they're trying to finesse their way through into the person's life. And just don't do that. So like I said, there's situations where people purposely don't let their intentions be known from the beginning, and then there's some times where people are just not confident enough to let the person know that they have feelings for them. And obviously people in these situations are more attached than the previous level because they're closer to the person is more obtainable, so there's a little bit more attachment, so it's kind of harder to get over this level of unrequited love. The next level is pursuing the love object, which is basically when the person takes the initiative to tell the person that they have feelings for them. And usually they'll do this by asking them on a date or asking them to spend time with them, basically. Now, unrequited love can happen early on in this level, meaning that you ask the person on a date, they immediately reject you, or it could happen after you spend some time with the person and then they're not feeling it, or they don't feel connection, so then they reject you after you've been dating for a little while. And obviously the attachment here is going to be a little stronger than the previous level, and that's why this level is a little bit harder to cope with and a little bit harder to get over. Okay, next up is an unequal love relationship. Now this level usually takes place within an actual relationship. So you've gotten past the dating stage and now you're getting a little more serious, but then the two people in the relationship start to want different things. People express love in different ways. Like some people want different things out of love. So some people want more commitment maybe than other people do. Some people want more passion than other people do. Some people are looking to settle down quicker than the other person is. So if you're moving into a relationship and you want two different things, more than likely you're going to end up splitting up. And People don't usually see this as a form of unrequited love because there are mutual feelings there, but it is a form of unrequited love because the love is imbalanced and then inevitably you won't end up together. So that is something that's hard to get over. That's something that's hard to cope with because it's like you're perfect for each other, or you have feelings for each other, you're so close to being together, but then it's like differences that draw you apart. So that is another form of unrequited love, and that's a little bit harder to cope with than if you were just dating or if you just got to know each other. And the last level of unrequited love is longing for a past lover. And this is pretty self-explanatory. The relationship ends, your ex no longer has feelings for you, or your ex has moved on, and you're still longing for your ex. Obviously, this is highest up on the scale because you have a deep emotional connection and attachment to this person. Obviously, you were in a relationship, and especially if the person breaks up with you, it can be hard to let that go because it's like you're holding on to the bond of the relationship, and then at the same time you're having to deal with the rejection. So this is the form of unrequited love that is the most intense. It's the hardest to get over, and people who don't know how to cope with it well, they'll end up becoming severely depressed, obsessed, stalking their exes, and in some cases even causing physical harm to their exes. So that's why this is highest up on this scale. Okay, so now we're moving on to why unrequited love tends to hurt us so badly. And the main reason that that happens is because of the rejection that we face from unrequited love. As human beings, we're all wired to need some type of acceptance because we are social creatures. So rejection does produce negative feelings in us. It's just a natural thing that happens. Some people are better at coping with rejection than other people are, but the fact of the matter is that it affects us all. The part of your brain that is activated when you're in physical pain is the same part of the brain that's activated when you're facing rejection. So it feels like we're being physically harmed when we're being rejected, even on a small scale. There was this study done where 2 of the people were actors and then 1 person was just the test subject. So basically all 3 of them were playing a game of catch in the room. They were throwing a ball amongst each other, and then in the middle of the game, out of nowhere, the actors started to throw the ball back and forth amongst themselves and cut the other person out. Now when the researcher tested that 1 person that was cut out of the game, he found that the person's part of the brain that's activated when you're in physical pain was activated during that interaction. So even rejection on such a small scale between strangers, or being rejected by 2 strangers that the person didn't even know, still activated pain within the person's head. So if rejection hurts on such a small scale like that, then you can imagine the magnitude of it when we're rejected by somebody that we actually do love or we actually do have romantic interest in. And that's why unrequited love hurts so badly. It's like a combination of that rejection mixed with that intense emotional feeling you have towards that person, and it just mixes up into a recipe for disaster. I actually read something earlier that said something along the lines of like, there was a study done where they were comparing like different levels of pain, and the pain of rejection was compared mostly to the pain of childbirth. Like dead serious, you can go and look it up. So rejection really is something that people underestimate, and that is the main reason why unrequited love can send us on such a downward spiral when we're going through it, and it's hard to climb out of when you're in it. There are people who are affected more negatively by unrequited love, and when I say that, I mean there are people who, when they're in it, they have a harder time climbing out of it. Like for example, I was on Tumblr and this girl posted something along the lines of, when somebody's not attracted to me, I automatically lose attraction to them. Basically, she was saying when somebody doesn't find her desirable, that makes her lose all desire for them. And I just stopped and thought to myself, why is it that some people have that mind frame where if somebody doesn't want them, they're on to the next one? And then there's some people who, when they're in an unrequited love situation, they get stuck. Like they feel like they just can't move on, they can't climb out of it, like they just feel like they're down and out. And what I came to find is that this happens depending on a person's attachment style. Now, if you watch my last video, I mentioned the 3 different types of attachment styles. And the attachment style that tends to be more likely to be caught up in unrequited love, or that has a harder time moving on, is a person with anxious attachment style. So I'll insert a clip from my last video explaining briefly what that is. If you don't know what an attachment style is, it's basically the way that your mind works while you're in a relationship, or the way that your dynamic is. Anxiously attached means that you are clingy, dependent upon your partner, and usually that means the relationship is going to be dysfunctional. A child develops an anxious attachment style basically when their parents are unpredictable and inconsistent with their love. So if a parent is neglectful one minute and then the next minute they're smothering you with love to try to make up for the fact that they neglected you, it causes a child to grow up to be very unbalanced emotionally, and they tend to be very clingy when they're in relationships, and they tend to be very dependent. Most times people with anxious attachment styles, they are the pursuer in relationships. So they're the ones that are chasing after the person, and then when they finally do get the person, they're the ones bending over backwards for the person to make sure the person stays. In an unrequited love situation, usually a person with an anxious attachment style, they're pursuing someone that does not want them, and they are coming across as so desperate, and they're so afraid of that rejection that they're actually causing that rejection, if that makes any sense. It's like they already have negative thoughts in their head about themselves and positive thoughts about the person. So right then and there, their confidence is completely down when they're going to approach the person. And people get turned off by people who are not confident, people who are too clingy right from the beginning. So that anxious attachment style causes people to think they're going to be rejected right out the gate. So they're coming in already with no confidence and expecting to be rejected. And in turn, their attitude and the way they come across is the reason that they get rejected. So it's like self-fulfilling prophecy pretty much. And usually people in this situation with an anxious attachment style, they'll get angry at the person who doesn't like them back. Like, have you ever been in a situation when someone had feelings for you, or you had feelings for someone and they don't like you back, and you know it's completely illogical to get mad at them for it, but for some reason you get pissed off about it, and then you don't want to admit to the person that you're pissed off about it because you just know it's illogical. So you try to suppress it, try to keep it to yourself. But having an anxious attachment style, you're not going to be able to suppress those emotions or keep them to yourself, because usually people with this style are a little bit emotionally unbalanced. So what happens is you'll have angry outbursts at the person, and then later on you'll be apologizing. So if you've ever been in that situation, it's more than likely that you have an anxious attachment style. Or if you've ever had someone like you and you don't like them back, and some days they're just so angry and upset and pissed off at you, and then the next day they're apologizing and they want to be around you. It's just a coping mechanism for this type of attachment style because of the fear of rejection and what's triggered inside of them when they are rejected by somebody that they have romantic interest in. So people with anxious attachment styles are more likely to get in unrequited love situations and have the hardest time crawling out of them. Okay, so to close out this video, I want to give a few tips on how to cope with unrequited love. I was in an unrequited love situation for literally years. Like, I was stuck on this one guy for years that did not have the same feelings for me as I had for him. And I feel like I could have gotten out of it much quicker if I knew the underlying problems that were below the surface of the unrequited love. Because you can go online and you can type in how to get over unrequited love, and you'll find tips like stop checking their social media, keep yourself busy, and things like that. And those are good tips. Like, they do help you to move forward. But if you don't get to the underlying root of the problem, then you're more likely going to be in this cycle much longer than you need to be. And also, you're more likely going to end up in this situation again. My first tip is to take the person off of the pedestal that you put them on. Because when we're in an unrequited love situation, we put this person on this pedestal. We project these positive traits onto the person that sometimes they don't even really have. We're not in a relationship with them, and we want to be. So our minds kind of fill in the blanks. Like, we start to fill in how good a relationship would be. We start to fantasize like about how great it would be to be with that person. We're basically idealizing them and giving them this platform that they really probably can't even live up to. So the first step, I think, is really shifting your brain to realize that this person is not God's gift to earth like you might think that they are. And once you get out of the unrequited love situation, you'll usually look back and see that the person is not that great. Not to be rude about it, because the person that you're interested in probably is really great, but just know that they're not as perfect as your mind is making them out to be. That's just the unrequited love, or that's just the rejection and the longing for them that's speaking. And also, it's important to point out the fact that a lot of us think that unrequited love is rooted in passion. Like, because we feel such an intense emotion, we think, okay, like, this is the real deal. This is how love really feels. But if you look into the psychology behind it, it's really not any form of passion. What we're feeling, the intense emotion we're feeling when we're in unrequited love, is actually turmoil. It's inner turmoil and inner conflict from the rejection that we're facing, and our self-esteem is basically battling with itself. And we confuse that with passion, and it's not passion at all. So the intense feeling that you're feeling, it's not love. So once you shift your mind off of that and you take that person off of that pedestal, you take the feelings off of that pedestal, then you'll be able to move on much more quickly. Next, you need to really sit and examine your emotional state. So if you're a person that feels depressed a lot of the time and you have this feeling of emptiness within yourself, you need to actually sit back and observe those emotions, because sometimes when we're in an unrequited love situation, we are just using it as an excuse, or we're using it as a mask to cover up those feelings of emptiness. A lot of people would rather stay in unrequited love situations and chase someone who doesn't want them rather than sit down and deal with their own feelings of emptiness. So really sit down and be honest with yourself. Really sit down and connect with your inner being and figure out if you're just using this unrequited love situation as a mask or as a distraction to what's really truly troubling you on the inside. It's much easier to just distract ourselves from our issues rather than deal with them. So that could be a reason why your unrequited love situation is prolonging and why you're having a hard time getting out of it. And next, I want you to kind of sit back, and the characteristics that you're projecting off of this person, sit back and think about, are those characteristics that you just lack within yourself, and so you're trying to chase it in another person. When I was in my unrequited love situation, I was in a very low place in my life. I had just gotten out of an emotionally abusive relationship, so my self-esteem was extremely low. I secluded myself from people. I was in college at the time, and I didn't want to socialize. I didn't want to interact with anybody, and my social anxiety was at an all-time high. And the person that I ended up catching feelings for, he was very, very social, very outgoing. He was like at all the events. He was a part of a lot of clubs. And because I was in such a low state, or my self-esteem was so low at that time, and I wanted to be more social and get out there, I admired those traits in him, and I wish they were within myself. And I really feel like that prolonged the unrequited love situation. And I hope that's making sense. So sometimes we will wish we had certain traits within ourselves, and when we see that in another person, it's sort of like we cling on to that person. And if that person doesn't want us back, it's like we remain clinged on to them because their traits, we are trying to almost absorb them. Like, I hope that makes sense. Like, we don't have them, so we're so attracted and attached to this person that does, and it keeps us pretty much stuck on them. So just sit back and maybe analyze those traits that the person has, or that you have projected onto them, and whether or not you actually like them, or you just like the traits and wish they were within yourself. And then start taking steps, to self-actualize. Start taking steps towards progressing and maybe adopting some of those traits within yourself, so you won't have to look for it in another person. Okay, so next you should examine your life and whether or not you have meaning or purpose in your life. When you wake up every day and you get out of bed, do you feel like you're just going through the motions? Do you feel like you have a purpose? Or do you feel like every day you're just kind of just getting through the day? People who don't have purpose, they tend to lack a lot of motivation, and they lack like a passion for life. And when that happens sometimes, and we get into an unrequited love situation where we fall in love with someone who doesn't love us back, again, it's a way of us masking what's really going on. And a lot of times with unrequited love, you'll see people, it's almost like their purpose is to get up and to make a good impression on this person and try to get the person to love them back. And even doing that, you can see that you're longing for a life purpose in general, and so you're making your life purpose impressing this person. These are things that helped me get out of my unrequited love situation. I just noticed that my life just wasn't filled with as much passion or doing something that I love to do or helping people as I would have liked it to, and being focused on him really did distract me from that fact. So once I decided to detach myself from him, that's when I had to really sit down and figure out what I'm passionate about. And a lot of people don't really want to do that. It's not really easy to sit down and, you know, reflect on your life. And so they'd rather, like I said, chase behind somebody and use them as a distraction. So really just sit down and reflect on your life. And if you don't have something that you're passionate about or that has meaning to you, find it and pursue that. And I guarantee your focus on that person will start to decline, and then you'll forget all about them. My next tip is to shift your focus from impressing them to empowering yourself. A lot of the times when we're in unrequited love situations, we'll try to go to the gym, work out, look our best just to get that person's attention. And you can harness this and turn this into a good thing. Because going to the gym is not bad. Trying to better yourself is not bad. But what you need to do is shift the goal from impressing them to empowering and impressing yourself. So go to the gym, work out, look good, and feel good for yourself. So shift your thinking from, I need to look good for this person, I need to go to the gym because of that, to, I want to go to the gym because I want to feel good. So shifting focus from impressing them to empowering yourself will help you get past unrequited love. Lastly, you should definitely take a look at your attachment style. And your childhood experiences. If you are someone who was neglected or abandoned as a child and or abused as a child, and you have developed an anxious attachment style, that's something that's deep rooted and that needs to be fixed with the help of a therapist. If you can afford to go to therapy, you should. Therapy definitely helps out. But if you can't, or if you're not ready to take that step towards therapy, then I would say just start taking steps towards self-love. Self-love is the one thing that is going to stop these situations from occurring. When you love yourself enough, you don't tend to chase after people who do not reciprocate your feelings. Self-love and self-care. Like, long before I ever stepped into any therapist's office, I started to practice the art of self-love, because I knew that was the first step in getting me to where I needed to be emotionally. So whenever you're about to make a decision, or whenever you're about to do anything throughout the day, just ask yourself, is this something that a person who loves themselves would do? I think I got that method from Teal Swan. I'm not sure, but I definitely got it from YouTube. And once I started implementing it into my life, I noticed that I was making much better decisions and I was in a better emotional and mental state, especially when it came to my relationships. So self-love, I think, is definitely the first key to healing any trauma and fixing any destructive attachment styles that you might have within a relationship. I'm going to do a whole video on self-care and self-love, so because it's so in-depth and in detail, I don't have time to put all the details into the end of this video. So if you are in an unrequited love situation, you are not by yourself, you're not alone. Just because you weren't officially in a relationship with this person, it doesn't make your feelings less valid, it doesn't make your pain less valid. Definitely be gentle with yourself through this process, and trust me, you're gonna get through it. It feels like you're not, but you're going to. Just take the steps towards loving yourself and healing yourself, and everything will be fine. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you have not subscribed already. And also, my sister told me that she subscribes to my channel, but she doesn't get notifications when I upload. So we figured out that you have to hit that little bell thingy. I'll put the picture of it up at the top of the screen. So subscribe and then hit the notification bell so that you'll get notified when I do upload. And hit the thumbs up button if you found this helpful. And also, if you know anybody who's going through something like this that needs some encouraging words, feel free to share it with them as well. Thanks for watching again, and I will see you guys in the next one.